They targeted my wife. They targeted my children. They called me a war criminal.
We're very capable as human beings of holding two truths at the same time.
There is an anti-Israel right that is becoming divisive in the Republican Party. Do people even want a guy with makeup and a suit behind a desk giving them the news?
My audience, definitely, this is the question they probably most want me to ask you. Today's episode is brought to you by Berkeley Moshav, a Jewish co-housing community being built in California. Visit berkeleymoshav.org to learn more. Welcome, one and all, to this special Election Day episode of Being Jewish with Jonah Platt. Today, I'm coming to you from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., future home of Qatar West. To mark this important day in our country's political calendar, I'm sitting with a guest who has been reporting on it for over 2 decades. He's the former ABC News senior White House correspondent, hosts both State of the Union and The Lead on CNN, and is a best-selling author with a brand new book out, which we will get to. We also both went to Jewish schools named Akiba, both went to camps named Ramah, and we both went on dates with Monica Lewinsky. No, wait, that's just him. Please welcome Mr. Dapper, Jake Tapper.
Thank you. I was excited to hear about your date with Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah, sorry. So, big day today, Election Day.
Yep.
It's your job to frame what's going on in our country, in politics. What's the macro storyline? What are you looking at?
Well, I mean, we have 3 big races, and as is always the case the year after the presidential election, it's the Virginia governor's race, the New Jersey governor's race, and the New York City mayoral race. And, you know, all 3 of them are incredibly consequential. The gubernatorial race is very competitive, both of them with moderate-ish Democrats running against MAGA-ish Republicans. And obviously Zohran Mamdani as the Democratic nominee for mayor in New York City is a story that I'm sure your viewers are quite aware of.
Quite vocal about, which
Yeah.
we'll get to. But what's so consequential about that Virginia race and that New Jersey race?
They're no more consequential than any other governor's race per se, but they happen to generally indicate, because the New Jersey is a blue state that's been trending purple. The last Democratic governor 4 years ago barely won. And then Virginia is a purple state, pretty much.
Right.
It has a Republican governor as of now, and we'll see what happens. But it tends to trend blue in presidential races. So you do get a sense for what is motivating voters. You get a sense for what is, with exit polls, what people are thinking about the country as they go out to vote. Who is going out to vote? That's always a really important part of this, because, you know, people talk about President Trump winning over this block or Kamala Harris winning over that block, but a lot of times it's also who is bothering to show up to vote, who is inspiring their voters to get to the polls.
Well, that really leads me to my next question, which is, if you're doing like a temp check right now on who and what the Democratic Party is, who and what the Republican Party is, where are we sitting going into these elections?
Well, I mean,
Or we don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think obviously the Republican Party is very much Donald Trump's Republican Party, for better, for worse, however people feel about it. And the Democratic Party is kind of drifting, and people are unsure of where it's headed. Zohran Mamdani, obviously, remove his politics, the issues that people might have with him. He is a democratic socialist. He is from the far left wing of his party. He's also charismatic, and he's been able to inspire a lot of people to get out to vote. The Democratic primary was not particularly competitive even.
Right.
You know, an experienced but very flawed, disgraced former governor, Andrew Cuomo, is his main opponent and has not really been able to dent his lead. And so is that the future of the Democratic Party? There are people on the left, the Bernie Sanders and AOC wing, who will say, this is how you get people to turn out to vote. There are other people who will say, that might be how you get people to turn out to vote in Manhattan,
Right.
but it's not how you get people to turn out in the suburbs of New Jersey or the suburbs of Washington, D.C. and Virginia, where a lot of these presidential races are won or lost.
Right. So speaking of Zohran, as you alluded to correctly, there have, been a lot of conversations within the Jewish community about him.
And I know Jews in New York that are voting for him, and I know Jews in New York who, at least as of now, are voting against him.
To what extent do you share the concerns as a Jewish person that the Jews who are against Mamdani are raising?
I mean, I'll just say this, and this is not specific to Mamdani, but there has been an opening, a shifting in the Overton window in terms of what has been all of a sudden more openly said about Jews. And I've seen it on the left and I've seen it on the right. And it bothers me that it is not condemned more by non-Jews. I see plenty of Jews saying, I don't like what Marjorie Taylor Greene just said or tweeted. And I've seen plenty of Jews say, I don't like what Rashida Tlaib just tweeted. And I have not seen a tremendous number of non-Jews in their own parties condemning it.
Right.
And so just as a Jew, that makes me sad.
To what do you attribute that hesitance to call out, certain things that are blatantly obvious to anybody paying attention?
Well, a couple things. One, I mean, politicians hate to go after people in their own party.
Right.
For any number of reasons. Two, there is a degree to which our ilk, is a niche ilk in the sense that there is a Trump administration official in the Pentagon who a couple years ago was, before she was in the administration, tweeting stuff about Leo Frank.
Okay.
Now, you know who Leo Frank is.
Sure.
Leo Frank was a Jewish business owner who was unfairly blamed for a rape in Georgia in
1913?
1913, right. And he's like a symbol, the Anti-Defamation League was created after he was, I think, lynched.
Yes, he was held in prison and then was busted out by angry mobs and lynched.
Yeah. That whole incident with Leo Frank caused A, the creation of the Anti-Defamation League, and B, a resurgence of the Klan in Atlanta, which is where this all took place.
Right.
The people who know about Leo Frank are Jews, and not just Jews, like super Jews.
Right.
And people who hate Jews.
Right.
Those are the two groups who know about Leo Frank. And there is a degree to which that symbolizes to me a lot of the issues that have to do with Jews and anti-Semitism in this country. Is I think a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah.
They're not really paying that close attention. We're a very small minority. I wish that the conversation about us reflected how small a minority we are.
Yeah.
Both worldwide and in the country. But I think if I said to somebody, how can you hire her? She was tweeting crazy, stuff about Leo Frank. People would be like, who?
Right.
And when I say people, I don't mean just people off the street. I mean learned men and women would have no idea what I'm talking about. And I think there is a degree to which that is kind of a baked-in problem when it comes to combating anti-Semitism in this country, is people just don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what this phrase means, or they don't know to have their ears tuned. There's words that people use. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I've sat down with Congress people before and sort of addressed this issue, and it was helpful for me to realize this congressperson has so many things in their portfolio, and they need to be paying attention to their district, what matters to them, and what they're voting on. And there's 10 bajillion issues, and they may feel like, of course, I'm aligned in theory with Jewish people and all people and what's right, but they don't have the bandwidth to be attuned to the things that we as Jews are attuned to.
And there are also 50 billion other bigotries going on in their congressional districts against Muslims and against Christians and against white people and against black people and trans people and part of paying attention to this era as a newsman who's also a Jew is realizing that there is, as you say, people have busy lives.
Yeah.
They don't have time to Wikipedia Leo Frank.
Right.
I'm
glad we're sort of voicing this for people listening who think that in every instance that uneducation or ignorance equals hate or not caring. It sometimes does, but it doesn't always. Sometimes they just don't know because they've got 10 billion things they have to know.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly a lot of that happens during the Mideast, during coverage of the Mideast peace process and the Hamas war and the Gaza war and all that stuff. And then people who all of a sudden are paying attention to a conflict that you and I have been steeped in for our entire lives. like learning things and only learning one part of it and not the other part of it. And, these things are incredibly complicated. I recently saw an interview with former Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, where he was talking about just the tightrope walk of talking about these issues.
I saw this too. He was very eloquent as always.
Yeah. And by the way, I could see like a Palestinian or an Israeli being offended by what he was saying. I mean, like theoretically,
right?
Because he was saying, well, you say this, and then somebody's like, well, what about that? And it's true though. I mean, like it's because you can't not acknowledge other people's pain while acknowledging this group, et cetera. By the same token, people are also like, this has become a thing in the Jewish community, is people hate when people like, there'll be a horrific act of anti-Semitism and somebody will issue a blanket statement condemning anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and all forms of hate. And that has become to Jews what all lives matter was to blacks after George Floyd.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, of course, but we're not talking about them right now. We're talking,
Yeah, 100%.
So that's, first of all, I think a lot of people are just like, I don't want to walk through this minefield.
Yeah.
That's another thing that you could sympathize with somebody.
It's very complicated balagan.
Yeah.
As we all know. Almost every Jew over the last 2 years, almost, in so many professions and industries, have experienced some level of increased hostility towards Jews, whether outright bigotry or through the guise of anti-Israel sentiment. Certainly in left-leaning industries like Hollywood and many others. Is that something you felt at all in the news media as a generally left-leaning industry?
Yeah, but again, I think a lot of it is rooted in ignorance.
Yeah.
Not like a hostile ignorance, just like a not knowing ignorance. An example might be somebody saying, oh no, they're not targeting him because he's Jewish. They're targeting him because they're against genocide. And that's all that is. And you have to maybe explain, okay, but this is just a professor who happens to be Jewish. This is not somebody who is like voicing support for Netanyahu or Netanyahu's policies. And the only reason this particular protest or whatever is targeting him is because he's Jewish. And if you target somebody because of their religion, and you're assuming that that person feels a certain way about this conflict going on thousands of miles away, that is by definition anti-Semitic. In the same way that it would be for a Muslim professor, for anybody to assume that this Muslim professor feels whatever about Hamas or about the Sudan, anything,
right.
And that Muslim professor who is just a Muslim American living his life and teaching mathematics or whatever, that focusing on that person because it seems to be that they're targeting them because of their religion, which does happen also. So I think a lot of it is, and I'm not talking about CNN per se, I'm just talking about the media in general.
Yeah.
And then, more openly, I've had protesters outside my house.
Yes, which I mean, I'll ask you about now. I was going to get to it later, but we'll talk about it now. You basically the exact scenario that you just described is what happened to you. They're protesting your house. They're protesting Dana Bash at her book event. Shout out to Dana, friend of the pod, had her on last year. There's a lot of other reporters out there saying certain things.
It's a town full of anchors and journalists,
right? And they're at your house,
and they went to my house and Dana Bash's house. 2 different houses, for the record. And we're identifiably Jewish, proudly Jewish. We're not reporting on, we're reporting on the Middle East in the same way I think most mainstream publications and news outlets reported on, reflecting on the pain that the Israelis experienced on October 7th and the pain of the hostage crisis, and the pain of the Palestinian people in Gaza, both before October 7th and, the historical inequities and all that. And then obviously once the war started, a horrific war that, was devastating and brought way too much pain and suffering on too many innocent people. And I don't think that there was really much difference between our coverage and anybody else's coverage in the so-called legacy media. So I do find it curious that we were targeted, and not at our places of work,
right?
But where our families are. Dana can talk about her experience, but like they targeted my wife, they targeted my children, my, minor children, yelling at them. And they called me a war criminal, They said I support genocide. I mean, just all of these things that are not true.
How upsetting is that on a human level to have that at your doorstep?
I feel angry because they're targeting me unfairly, because they're not, even though they claimed that they were actually talking about specific things that I reported on, a lot of it was false or twisted. And it also did not reflect other things that I reported on. Like you can do a story about a hostage family in pain one day and then do a story about, starvation in Gaza the next. And you're not endorsing either side, or you're just covering a news story, which is multifaceted and has way too much pain all over the place. So I thought it was unfair. I thought it was anti-Semitic. I guess what I'm getting at is I wonder who's behind the protests. Not the 10 idiots who showed up, but the money behind it. Because these protests were at every Joe Biden event, every Kamala Harris event. They were outside the home of Anthony Blinken, who was Jewish, Secretary of State under Biden. And then the election happened, and then poof. They're not at any Trump events. They're not at any Vance events. They're not outside the house of Marco Rubio. I'm not saying they should be. I don't want anybody to experience what I experienced, but why did they only target Biden and Harris? Why did they focus so much on two Jewish journalists and Jewish members of Congress, like Congressman Landman from Cincinnati area?
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's suspicious.
Yeah.
The goal was to disrupt and divide.
Yes.
Why would you go after Blinken and not Rubio? Again, I don't want Rubio targeted, but but theoretically, why?
I suppose strategically, if you're trying to get one party to pay attention in a certain way to members of its own party, and as you say, divide, that would be interesting.
But what about when the Republicans win and they run the House and the Senate and the White House? Why is there nobody protesting Speaker Johnson? Why is there nobody?
Well, you don't protest the Republicans because no one on that side is going to change their minds about how they feel about this situation.
But is that true? I mean, we talked about the Overton window shifting, and there is an anti-Israel right that's increasing in size and voice, and it is becoming divisive in the Republican Party.
That is sharing the same sentiments against Israel, the same reasoning that you're hearing on the left?
Sure. If you listen to the Candace Owens of the world and the Tucker Carlsons of the world.
Well, those folks, at least what I've heard, and I'm sure you've heard more, it's the conspiracy theory stuff, and it's the Jews are behind Charlie Kirk's murder stuff, and
but that's what I'm saying.
But that's a little different than the Jews want genocide. Jews.
No, but there's a lot of overlap. They're arguing that too. There's a lot of anti-AIPAC sentiment on the right that is similar to what you see on the left. Marjorie Taylor Greene did a tweet a few weeks ago in which she was talking about how she didn't take shekels from AIPAC, right?
Yeah.
Which is an American organization.
Right.
They don't give shekels, they give dollars.
It's only American people.
Right. And I don't know, and I don't want to sound conspiratorial myself.
What do you think the end goal is?
I think, first of all, there's an anti-Semitism problem in the country on the left and the right.
Yeah.
Period. I also think there's a racism problem. I also think there's a sexism problem. I think
we got issues.
Yeah. I'm not saying this is the only one, but it is. It seems to be louder than it ever has been in my lifetime.
For sure.
I'm 56, and so it's been louder than it's been in a long time. So I grew up in a very different world than the one my kids are growing up in. But I don't remember experiencing serious anti-Semitism ever.
No.
I grew up in a not Jewish neighborhood in Philadelphia. I didn't go to Jewish school till 6th grade, so there were years before that. But I went to a Jewish school, a Jewish day school. Governor Shapiro was 4 years behind me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I went to Dartmouth, which is a pretty waspy school. Certainly not as Jewish as Penn.
Right. University of Pennsylvania.
I just don't remember really experiencing anti-Semitism.
It was the golden age.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And now my kids are growing up in a different world where, and again, I'm not talking about people protesting Netanyahu's policies.
Right.
A lot of American Jews have their issues with Netanyahu. A lot of Israeli Jews have their issues with Netanyahu.
No one protests him more.
And I'm not saying that people shouldn't have the right to protest, et cetera, including people who are in this country on student visas. That's a whole other topic, but like I'm a free speech believer. I'm talking about specifically saying you are Jewish, therefore you think this. I'm talking about spray painting on a synagogue, free Palestine.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the Jews killed on October 7th, as you know better than I am sure, were peaceniks.
We've talked about that on this show. They were the most left-leaning, peaceful, bringing Gazans into their homes, doing peace marches, all that stuff, and then they all got murdered for it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that they were so close to Gaza was because
they believed in that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When you just assume that somebody I'm not going to assume a black person thinks anything about anything.
Right.
Why would anybody assume a Jew thinks anything about anything?
So you said, as we were talking about your coverage, that you felt like you covered the Gaza-Israel conflict sort of just like anybody else.
Yeah.
And I would agree, except that, or rather, I would say you did it in the way that everybody else should have, which is to give both sides weight. And it seems like when you give the Israeli side sort of any weight, there are detractors and people who will, come after you for that, simply for shining a light on 50% of the conflict as opposed to the other 50%.
Yeah.
One of the things you spoke about was about the widespread denial of some of the Hamas atrocities, especially the sexual violence against women.
Yeah, that's one of the things that the protesters said was that I lied about the rapes. That was one of the things they targeted me for, lying about the rapes.
You were there.
Women were raped.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a pretty planned out. The New York Times just had a really good story on it, like with all these. I mean, this was not an incidental targeting of civilians. This was purposefully targeting civilians. That's why it's called terrorists. They try to strike terror in the hearts of civilians by targeting civilians. If it had just been a military operation, if they had just attacked people who were at that moment serving in the Israeli Defense Forces, I think it would have been covered very, very differently.
Do you feel like the denial aspect of things was improved upon over time?
We were one of the first media outlets to cover the sexual violence, but then people started speaking out a lot more. Sheryl Sandberg played a really important role.
Another friend of the pod, we had her on last year.
I noticed, as did so many people, how quiet international feminist organizations were, and domestic feminist organizations were, women's organizations, about the targeting of women.
I don't feel like I ever heard from those organizations even 2 years later.
This is what is intersectionality, right? Is the idea that that all the progressives have to be aligned on every issue, all the progressive people and groups, and that a labor union needs to speak out in favor of the Palestinians and against what Israel is doing, even if the labor union has nothing to do with this topic. And I think that that probably played a role in the alliance of progressive groups with what is legitimately a serious, now humanitarian, but even before October 7th, human rights issue when it comes to how Palestinians in the West Bank are treated, and also the plight of the Palestinians in Gaza. I mean, those are legitimate issues for people to be upset about and people want to be activist on. And I think that because of that, there was the humanity of the Israeli victims erased on October 7th. Mm-hmm. Because it's complicated, right? It's complicated to say, I hate what happened on October 7th, and I hate also what's going on in the war And I mean,
I don't know, is it that complicated? You just made it sound pretty easy.
It's not complicated for me, but for people who are activists, I think that there was a lot of anger towards them if they said something like that because of the historic inequities having to do with Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. And, I mean, that was a long, ugly war.
I'm always of the mind of we're very capable as human beings of holding two truths at the same time.
We increasingly seem to be in a world where somebody cannot say President Biden should not have run for re-election, and that what he did in hiding his deterioration from the public and from Democrats up until it could not be hidden anymore during the debate is exactly how we ended up with President Trump, who is now doing a lot of things that a lot of Democrats hate, and independents and probably some conservatives too. Mm-hmm. That's a complicated thought. I don't have trouble saying it. You probably don't have trouble hearing it, but it's not one that lends itself easily in the world that we're in right now, in which so many forces are trying to divide us and avoid common ground and villainize people who are not on your team.
I continue to believe in people that, that's a choice we all get to make if we're going to play that game or not, regardless of whatever forces are acting upon us. Like, we don't have to opt into polarization if we don't want to.
Well, no, but it's a warm bath being on a team, right? I mean, I see people on social media, just the worst of us.
Are there any particular moments or stories or events that occurred while you were covering the war in those first couple of weeks that have haunted you or stayed with you?
Yeah, of course. There was a woman named Adi who was killed. Her husband was they were on a kibbutz, and they had 2 kids. And he was I think he either went off on a jog or he went off to go look at the sunrise or something like that. And the terrorists came in, and the kids were kidnapped, and Adi was they couldn't find her body. They thought she was kidnapped too, but it turned out she had been killed, and her body was in the house. And I covered it and talked to her parents, and I still hear from her mom every now and then. Mm. What did killing Adi achieve? What did it achieve? I went with 2 Nova survivors back to Nova, to the site of the music festival.
That's quick to go back. That must have been really hard for them.
They were weeping. I've been in war zones before. I've been to Iraq once. I've been to Afghanistan twice. We went to Paris both after the Charlie Hebdo murders and then the Bataclan murders. I'd never talked to more victims of more face-to-face acts of terror. It's rough. It's rough hearing these stories.
I can only imagine. That's a lot to carry.
I'm still right now I'm feeling tension in my chest just talking about it and thinking about it.
My audience definitely, this is the question they probably most want me to ask you. Which is, many legacy media companies, including at times CNN, have reported on the Israel-Gaza war in ways that have times been damaging and false, categorized by some as modern blood libel. I'm talking about stuff like 14,000 babies will die in 48 hours, or the Al-Ali hospital, not qualifying Hamas body count numbers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that hard to get some of those things right. So it's hard not to draw nefarious conclusions when you're sitting on the outside.
Sure.
What do you say about that?
I mean, I think that we have a First Amendment in this country, and criticizing the press is part of that. And, there are a lot of times that I agree with criticisms of the media, not just on this story, but on plenty of others. And I try to not replicate those mistakes on my show, but I don't control anything other than my show.
Right.
And I have no idea how many innocent civilians were killed in Gaza. And I don't think anybody does.
No.
Because it was a horrible war in an largely urban setting. I mean, I think we can just say it was tens of thousands and too many civilians. And other than that, I don't know anything for sure. And I see, there's some experts who say it's the lowest civilian to combatant ratio of deaths in modern warfare. Others disagree. I don't know. I mean, so we report what we know, and like I have avoided the numbers for some time just because, having nothing to do with Israel, Gaza, I'm just somebody who's covered wars, I know how incredibly difficult it is to know these numbers. We still don't know how many Iraqi civilians were killed during the American war in Iraq. I mean, there really isn't a comprehensive, reliable number. And same thing with Afghanistan. So I don't know why anybody would be sure of any number when you're dealing with a war that is prolonged and, there's, people are still under the rubble right now.
So why is it common practice to report those numbers as if it is a sure thing?
Like, look, initially the Israeli number of victims on October 7th was 1,300. And then they did an accounting, and then the number was lowered to like closer to 1,200. Mm-hmm. And then we changed it to that. And that also illustrates how difficult it is to know anything for sure in the fog of war. Why is it done? I can't say.
Yeah. What's the conversation like behind the scenes when something like this happens, where something goes out in the news and it's like, oh crap, that's not true, we got that wrong? Like, what is the conversation like? Is there a conversation?
Well, I think, the hospital from early on in the conflict, where the Palestinians, the health authority, and Hamas were saying the Israelis fired upon this hospital and killed, this is by number.
I forget, X number.
But it was like 500 people.
Yeah, something like that.
And it turned out it was an errant missile that had been accidentally fired by Islamic Jihad, and the number was probably closer to like 30 or something like that. I think that was a big mistake by a lot of media organizations.
Oh, yeah.
And I think people learned from it, which is these things, in the fog of war, we really have no idea. And we need to be patient. And I do think coverage of the war changed to a degree after that mistake was made apparent.
You saw that, like a slowing down?
I think so. Just because it's so difficult to again, this is not just Israel. This is all wars. It's very difficult to get accurate information, especially instantaneous accurate information. Governments, again, not singling out the Gaza government, but governments lie, and governments get things wrong, and governments put out information that they think is helpful to their side. I think there was skepticism, a healthy skepticism that people realized from. I know I did, because I think I was on air when that happened, and we were trying to get the information in real time. That's the other problem, is that when this is happening in real time on TV, it's more. It's just laid bare before everyone to see. The news-making process is much more complicated than we're just getting this report in. It usually takes a long time.
How much is, people don't trust us right now? How much is that part of the conversation?
Well, that's part of the conversation in news media writ large for any number of reasons, and has been for a long time, and it's getting worse.
Yeah.
And some of it is self-inflicted wounds, and some of it is purposeful attacks. Leslie Stahl from CBS News from 60 Minutes says that Trump told her one time, she asked, why do you attack us? And he said, so they don't trust you, when you report on me. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing, but something like that. And, that's eminently believable that he said it and that he thinks it. And, that happens. Democrats are doing that too, not to the extent that Donald Trump is, of course, but Democrats are doing it too. And there are a lot of news outlets that their business is don't trust the media, trust me. And they spend a lot of time attacking media so that their listeners will trust them and no one else. And it's the easiest thing in the world to say the media is not doing this, the media is not covering this, the media has a bias against you, I'm the one you should be listening to. And people are commodifying that, and some of them are making quite a good living.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit. Talk a little bit about Jake the Jew. Mm-hmm. I mentioned you were in Israel after 10/7, but I imagine that was a little bit different than your time at Tel Aviv University,
right,
when you were studying abroad.
In 1988. Yeah.
Very different. How formative was that experience for you?
You have to remember, I went to a Jewish high school. So being surrounded with like when I say I went to a Jewish high school, I mean like I went to a Hebrew day school.
Right.
Not just like I went to a school with a lot of Jews in it. Like
Right.
it was, everybody was Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't strange for me to be in a school that was everybody was Jewish. I mean, I think what I remember is how foreign the Israelis seemed to me, how unlike my experience. So our dorms were really crappy. And I shared a room with a guy, and it was a 4-room octuple or whatever. Like
So like a suite with
yeah, but suites, that's
not,
it was
too,
not
too kind a word.
There was a really small, shitty kitchen, a really small, shitty bathroom, and 4 bedrooms, 2 people each.
Wow.
I mean, it was interesting in the sense that the Israelis were so, like, one of the guys was Druze, one of the guys was an immigrant from Morocco, and and look, it's empirically cool being in a part of the world that is thousands of years old,
Mm-hmm.
and you're walking by buildings that have been there for hundreds, if not thousands of years, and like the Arab quarter and the Muslim quarter. And I mean, all of that is just fascinating.
So you mentioned your Jewish high school.
Yeah, Akiba Hebrew Academy.
Hebrew Academy.
Now called the Jack M. Barrack Academy or
Right.
something.
What did going to Jewish high school contribute to both your Jewish identity and your Jewish literacy?
What I really learned the most and enjoyed the most was the, like, Talmud, all that stuff, Mishnah, and the history of just like debate and poring over seemingly esoteric issues and rabbis debating every little part of them, and that was really interesting.
Well, that tracks for you.
Yeah, no, and it definitely was very influential in terms of my career, and also like being raised in a minority religion, like, has definitely made me more empathetic to other people in minority religions, whether it's Mormons or Muslims or anyone, or Sikhs, or just the idea of who am I to judge.
We also mentioned that you are a Camp Ramah alum.
Camp Ramah in the Poconos.
Yes, Poconos. I went Camp Ramah, Ojai, California.
Which is where my nephew and niece went.
Nice.
When I went to Poconos, you had to go for 8 weeks. Now you can go for like 2 weeks.
It's so long for so young. I was very homesick my first year when I was 8. When I went for the month, I went for
Miserable.
4 weeks. Yeah, that was tough.
When I told, so my wife, you and I were talking about this before. My wife converted to Judaism to marry me, and there were, this was I wouldn't say it was a big point of contention, but when we were talking about whether or not we were going to send our kids to camp, I mean, she was just like, absolutely not. We're not going to send our kids away for 8 weeks or 4 weeks, or, what are you talking about? And it's like, yeah, you kind of have a point.
So my wife also converted. Weekly shout out to Courtney. And on our first date, I said, hey, listen, I'm really serious about you. You're really serious about me.
On your first date?
Yeah, we had a whole like saga before we even went on our first date.
Okay.
But basically, like, we were kind of already in love before we even went out to dinner. But then we go to dinner, I said what I just said, and I said, if this were to go all the way, like I think we both sort of feel like it might, would you be open to talking about converting? And she said yes, very graciously. It was great. And I said, and if that happens, our kids are going to Camp Ramah. It like came up literally.
You did
immediately.
Ramah on first night?
Oh, yeah.
First date? That's
Yeah.
funny. I did make it clear on the first date that I would only marry a Jew.
How'd she take that?
She was 27 and I was 30, about to turn 35. And so I was late getting married, 35, like everyone's married, everyone's got kids.
Sure.
And I was just like, the last girlfriend I'd had, like, we broke up because she would not have converted. She was a Catholic, and I went to church with her one time. One of her relatives had died, and they had images of the 12 Stations of the Cross, and they were pretty anti-Semitic imagery in the depictions.
What we're talking about, like big hook nose kind of guys.
You know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about. Yeah, that was pretty interesting. Anyway, no, I asked her how serious she was about her religion, and she said not at all. I said, because I would only marry. I'm Jewish, and I would need to be married to a Jewish person.
Yeah. The other thing that was put on our first on the table was okay, but we're doing Christmas with my parents every year, was on her
That's
end.
fair.
Totally fair.
That's how I was raised. My mom converted.
Right.
So we would go down to North Carolina, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and they would have a Christmas tree and stockings. But we would all, if it coincided, we would also light the Hanukkah. We don't have it. We've never had a Christmas tree, but we do a thing called Winter Wonderland, where there's lots of decorations. It's not Christmas. The colors are blue and white, but there's lots of snow and that kind of thing.
We are the same, although my wife is not a huge fan of like the blue and white motif so much. So it's a lot of sort of like silver and gold.
Yeah.
But wintry,
yeah.
Hanukkah, like we have Hanukkah ornaments around, like
Nice.
things of that nature.
Yeah.
All right, so the wives should swap swap style stories. I call my wife Martha Jewett. Have you ever wanted to live in a Jewish village right here in America? Now you can. Berkeley Moshav is a multi-generational Jewish co-housing community located in Berkeley, California. They are a vibrant community of kids, elders, and everyone in between, participating together as neighbors in the rhythms of Jewish life. They are family-focused, Jewishly diverse, and open to all backgrounds and family types. Berkeley Moshav has already begun construction on their future village, and there are a few homes left. So to learn more about this unique Jewish co-housing community and how you can reserve a home, visit berkeleymoshav.org and sign up for an info session. Once again, that's berkeleymoshav.org. As we've mentioned in this conversation, you are also an author somehow, a prolific one in all your free time. And you also brought up the book you released this past spring with Alex Thompson of Axios, Original Sin.
Yeah, about Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. What made you and Alex decide to take this book on, and when did you decide we're doing a book about this?
We all watched Joe Biden age,
Right.
and we were told he was fine in the media. Those of us in the news media were told he was fine, and if it came up in conversation on air, he's fine, blah, blah, blah. And then the debate came, and I had a front row seat to that. The debate was starting at 9, and he showed up for the walkthrough at like 8:30, 8:31.
That's way late in the game.
Yeah, no, Trump had come hours before, and you need to get your sense for the space and know which is your camera and all that stuff. And he showed up way late. When I was walking out there at 8:45 or 8:50, whenever we were allowed to go out there after Biden was done, walking through it, I was thinking, God, this is so late.
Yeah, that is 9 o'clock's a late
9
start
o'clock's
time.
late, and it's an hour and a half debate. We're not going to be done till 10:30. What the hell?
Right.
And then he hobbled out, right, and shuffled out and looked every day of his, I think, 81 years at that point. And he seemed sick. He was coughing. It was bad. And I remember thinking, like, for people who have not really been paying close attention, he's going to look really old. Because if you haven't really been paying much attention.
Yeah, whatever picture you had of him in your mind, it's not going to look like what you're seeing today.
People should go watch what he sounded like during the 2020 debate.
Right.
There were 2 debates with Trump, and it's very different.
Yeah.
And then go get shocked even more when listen to his debate in 2012 with Paul Ryan. I mean, so anyway, I thought, wow, this is going to surprise a lot of people. And then I thought during that first answer that he really started to lose his train of thought, which was in the first 10 minutes. And we have iPads so we can communicate with the control room because we can't talk, obviously.
Right.
So I wrote, "Holy smokes," after that first horrible answer. And Dana wrote on one of the question pages to me, he just lost the election. So it was pretty clear pretty early that something was really going down. And it got worse, and some answers were better than others or less horrible than others, but the whole thing was awful.
Yeah.
And he came over to us afterwards, and I don't think he seemed to have any idea that it was as bad as it was. It's hard to argue that was anything than the worst debate performance in the history of presidential debate.
Oh, yeah. It changed the course of
Changed the
history.
course of history, yeah. And then there was 3 weeks plus of the Democratic Party telling us he was fine. And it was just crazy.
You have now seen 5 feet away from you, he's not all right. And they're still telling you he's all right. At that point, you're like, something's off.
They were gaslighting the American people. And then became the whole period where Democrats were saying, well, he just needs to go out and show that was an aberration and just do 10 press conferences and 5 interviews and 6 town halls. And he was not capable of doing it.
Yeah.
not a lot of people were talking. And that was one of the reasons why this was not covered to the degree it should have been. I really put most of the blame on Democrats.
Well, there's that picking aside a little bit, right? I mean, prioritizing what you're going to cover and not.
Yeah, I mean, but people did cover it. Should we have covered it more? I guess. I mean, like, it's always easy in retrospect. I mean, like, should we be covering right now more how much money the Trump family is making with crypto? I mean, probably. Are we going to find out in 5 years that they're worth $1 trillion? I mean, like, I don't. It's tough to balance this stuff. But I do primarily blame Democrats who saw how bad things were and didn't share it. In any case, the day before the election, Alex was on my show, and I said, I think she's going to lose tomorrow, and there's going to be a real reckoning. Yeah. I mean, like, you looked at all the polls, and you looked at all the trends, and it just seemed like I can't see one battleground state that he's going to lose. Not one. First of all, people are very hinky on polls, which I understand, since 2016, when the polls seemed to suggest Hillary was going to win.
Right.
So I get that. I get the skepticism. I also think there's a lot of people that didn't want to believe it.
Right.
But I mean, I thought it seemed pretty clear to me he's going to win, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close. I think it's not going to be as bad as it would have been if Joe Biden had stayed on the ticket.
And I know you guys have said that this is somewhat of a first draft. Like, there's even more that's come out since you've published.
It's a first draft, but I just mean, like, we will learn more.
Sure.
Which, like, for example, poor Joe Biden, who we all want to be healthy and live a long life, is now suffering from cancer. And one of the cancers he suffered from is because he didn't get a PSA test while he was in the White House, because it seems like there are a lot of tests they were not doing because they didn't want to know the answers. So, yeah, there's more that we're going to find out. But that said, like, the book, I'm really proud of it. I think it's, it's a lot of very intense reporting. I've talked to I've done some podcasts where somebody was like, I was skeptical and mad at you, and then I read the book and you convinced me. So, like, I'll take that,
Yeah.
But look, it's just a true story about a horribly tragic circumstance that it ended up having repercussions far beyond one man and his family.
Somehow you also found time to publish another book.
Well, this book I had been working on for 3 years.
Sure.
So this book was, the first draft of Race Against Terror was done before Election Day last year.
Right.
I had been working on it for a long time.
The book is called Race Against Terror, Chasing an Al-Qaeda Killer at the Dawn of the Forever War.
And that's so nice that you've agreed to send a free copy to everybody that's listening.
Congratulations, you get a book. Give us the log line. I just have to, the main character's name is Spin Ghoul.
He's a bad guy.
He's the bad guy, which is just like a really cool bad guy name. So give my audience the log line.
So the log line is, it is the race of assistant U.S. attorneys and FBI agents to prove a case against an Al-Qaeda killer who's in Italian custody before the Italians put him in a refugee camp, and he just vanishes into the night and then goes and kills as many Americans as he can. And it's a completely true story. I've written a few novels too, and so I took whatever I've learned about pacing and structure from the novels and applied it to this book to make it read like a thriller.
Yeah, and it does. It's really cool. The style of it is it's almost like sort of cinematic. The level of detail that you get into as you're sort of painting the scenes, and the tone of people speaking and the action. It was very impressive. I'm imagining you're taking all this from testimony.
Yeah.
Are you getting such detailed testimony and interviews that you're able to paint these novelistic scenes?
Well, yes. And thank you. That's a huge compliment. And I hope I'm sure some Hollywood producers are listening, and it has not been optioned yet.
Okay. Pay attention.
I do think it's just, forget me and forget the book. It's just inherently a fascinating story. And when I heard about it, I just couldn't believe the story, because it's all about the sleuthing and all about the fingerprints and the witness testimony and how do we prove this case against this guy. And it was just so interesting to hear. And then, there's a ton, because they tried this guy. He's the first and only foreign terrorist tried in a U.S. criminal court for killing American service members in a battlefield. Never happened before.
Why is that? Why is it such a unique occurrence?
Because initially, the way that the Bush people did it, and let's assume the best possible intentions, they were just trying to keep us safe in a terrifying circumstance, was to torture people. The CIA would capture terrorists or suspected terrorists and torture them. And that rendered their testimony inadmissible in any court. And so there really wasn't a lot of evidence that they could try these initial guys with.
And they would just put them in Guantanamo.
They just stick them in Guantanamo and worry about it later.
Right.
Then Obama came in, he wanted to close Guantanamo, and he wanted to try as many of these people as possible. It became clear that some of the people could not be released because they were too dangerous, too dedicated to killing Americans, but also the evidence against them was tainted. And so they either would be shipped to some other foreign country or they're still in Guantanamo today. And there are about 15 still at Guantanamo today, including some of the people that Spingool worked with when he was doing his stuff. But then the other thing that's so interesting when I went back and wrote about this and researched it, because I kind of forgot, was everybody was so scared shitless of terrorists in 2011, 2012, 2013. The notion of bringing a foreign terrorist to the United States to try them scared people.
Yeah.
People were still, 10 years after, terrorized. Still, Democrats, Republicans, nobody wanted them to come. To this day, only one detainee from Gitmo has been tried in a criminal court. And that's this guy, he's in the book, Ahmed Galani.
It didn't go well.
It did not go well. He was acquitted of 284 out of 285 charges because the witness was thrown out of court because they learned his name through torture.
Okay. All right. So now we're going to debut a short news segment called 5 Deep Questions.
Oh, boy.
And if this is a segment that you enjoy, I hope you do, we're then going to be moving it after this episode behind the paywall to our new subscriber community that we're calling the Kehillah, which is Hebrew for community. You can find it at beingjewishpodcast.com. Click on the community button. You can join. We're going to have all kinds of awesome stuff there, this new segment being one of them. So without further ado, here's 5 Deep Questions with Jake Tapper. What's a mistake that you have made recently that you still regret?
Most recently, I was a little harsh with my daughter. I told her that we were going on vacation and we were going to the same place that her boyfriend and his family were going. And I thought that was like a really nice gesture by me.
Yeah.
She wanted her own room and she wanted her own bed. And that makes sense to want her own bed. But like we were getting a suite. I know I got really mad because I thought she wasn't appropriately
appreciative.
Yeah. Grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And I should have been much more relaxed about it, and I regret it.
A lot of opportunity to regret the way we speak to our kids as parents.
Yeah.
In the heat of the moment.
Yeah. So that's one that I think about today.
What's one goal or dream you haven't yet fulfilled?
Oh, wow. I've achieved pretty much everything I wanted to achieve.
Amazing.
So I have a great family. I have achieved in my career success beyond my wildest dreams. I'm pretty centered on that stuff.
Baruch Hashem.
Yeah.
What's the most challenging part of your job?
The most difficult stuff is the stuff that I have no control over, which has to do with the changing media environment. I mean, you're a success because the podcast world has exploded, right? YouTube is the biggest media company in the world.
Yeah.
So all of that is the most difficult part of my job because it's like, okay, how do I do what I do in this new world? Like, do people even want a guy with makeup and a suit behind a desk giving them the news? I don't even know if they want that anymore. So that, and I don't control any of it. And all I can do is try to, figure it out and do as much as I can.
Makes sense. What's the most important key to being a good parent?
The part that I find the easiest, but the most important, is the constant expressions of unconditional love, which it makes me sad that we all didn't grow up getting that, but I'm going to do everything I can to make sure my kids never have any doubt that that's all that matters. And in fact, somebody asked me the other day if I could have 3 wishes, what they would be. And the answer was, I just want my daughter to be happy where she is, and she is. I just want my son to be happy where he is, and he is. And I don't care about wish number 3. And that was a very sincere answer. That's really how I feel.
Sure.
I don't really give a shit about anything else other than them. And I think they know that.
Well, if they didn't, they do now.
Yeah.
And number 5, you have unlimited time, unlimited budget. What is one thing you would do to help create a more secure, thriving Jewish future?
Man, I don't know. I mean, part of me is tempted to say, like, getting behind whatever Abraham Accord comes to Gaza and the West Bank. But I don't think that that's a matter of budget.
Right.
By the same token, I also think that that's kind of a cop-out, because I think no matter what, there's going to be anti-Semitism.
Right.
And there could be peace in the Middle East, and there still would be anti-Semitism.
Of course.
And, like, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
I mean, it matters if there's peace in the Middle East, but there's always going to be anti-Semitism, because we're always going to be blamed for whatever. You can't make people who have never met a Jew meet a Jew and like a Jew. I mean, I could send you into, Appalachia or whatever, and, like, I'm sure they'd like you.
Yeah, we'd get along. We'd have a good time.
But I don't know that anybody wants a missionary program of Jews. No, we're not trying to convert you. We just don't want you to hate us.
Yeah, we just want to meet you.
Maybe that's what it is. It's a
Yeah,
missionary program with bagels.
Right. We just show up at the doorbell with the basket of bagels.
But good bagels.
Yes, New York bagels.
H&H and or Zabar's and yes, that would be a.
I like that. That's good.
But again, not trying to convert.
Right, no proselytizing.
No, you do your religion, and we respect it and we love it. And we just want you to know we're here, and we mean you no harm.
Yeah, we mean you no harm. I love that. All right, that was 5 deep questions with Jake Tapper. Again, we're not going to show that again on a regular program. If you want to hear the next 5 deep questions with my next guest, please join our Kehillah. I'll say more about it after the episode.
Who else should we send? I mean, like Natalie Portman. It needs to be like really good people represented.
On the thing?
Sandler.
I mean, Adam Sandler shows up at your door.
Everybody
with
loves
bagels.
Sandler.
Let's talk about Jews. It'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, final thing here. We like to end the show with a lightning round. So these are not deep questions. These will be a little bit quicker.
Okay.
Favorite Jewish holiday?
Hanukkah. Just because I like giving presents to my kids and my wife.
That's a good reason.
Yeah.
Best Jewish deli in D.C.?
Call Your Mother's good. Call Your Mother is a bagel place that also
That's a
has
great
some deli.
name.
Yeah.
Call Your Mother. I love that. Okay,
good.
great. You've said you studied the Talmud in Jewish day school and high school. Is there a Talmudic teaching that sticks out to you? Something that you never forgot that you always liked?
It's not the best of the Talmud.
Doesn't have to be.
It's the most arrogant statement I've ever heard. It's from a rabbi named Solomon ibn Gabirol, and it made me laugh so much when I first read it. Tiny little ants that they are, they venture to compare themselves with me.
Wow.
It's so funny. When I read that in whatever class I read, my best friend Josh and I, we just thought it was the funniest. I mean, it's not anything to emulate. It's just like,
but that's a confident rabbi right there.
It's like, who says that?
Yeah.
And now he's known forever.
Maybe he was onto something.
I guess.
If you could make any documentary, what would it be about?
My favorite founding father is a guy that nobody has ever heard of.
Ooh.
He was Benjamin Franklin's grandson. His name was Benjamin Franklin Bache, B-A-C-H-E. And he inherited his grandfather's printing press, and he started a newspaper called the Aurora Advertiser in Philadelphia. And he was the bane of George Washington's existence. He was a very tough, aggressive journalist. He was a publisher who broke stories about George Washington that George Washington hated, like George Washington has slaves, or everyone acts like George Washington is so great because he doesn't draw a salary, but guess what? He just uses the Treasury as his own personal bank account. There are some theories that one of the reasons George Washington only served 2 terms was because he was so annoyed with Benjamin Franklin Bache. And then he was the same with John Adams, and he broke a ton of stories with John Adams, the XYZ affair and all this stuff. And then John Adams passed the Alien and Sedition Acts and locked him up, and he died in prison.
Wow.
And he was a truly just ballsy journalist. But I don't think anybody really wants to hear any hero stories about journalists.
Could be a musical. If Hamilton could be a musical. Bache could be a musical.
You joke about that, but I actually started a screenplay in which it is a musical. Not like I'm not writing songs,
right?
But it uses punk rock from the 70s as their theme, as the theme of these journalists. But anyway, so that's kind of like a idea I have that like appeals to me and maybe me only, maybe you now too. But.
Yeah, I'm into it. All right, cool. We're going to keep an eye on it. And the last question that we ask all of our guests, challah, rip or slice?
Oh, rip.
Oh, easy.
That's not even, why would anybody cut challah?
Because
unless you're making sandwiches.
Well, so if you're doing French toast the next day, you want to preserve the integrity of the loaf.
You buy two loaves.
Or you want everybody to get equal piece. You want to control the amount the kids are getting.
Control? What? No. Rip it away. Dunk it in the matzo ball soup.
Oh yeah.
Dunk it in the honey on Rosh Hashanah.
100%.
Oh my God. That's not even.
That's
close.
the clearest answer you've given all day.
That's like asking me if I would order a blueberry bagel. Absolutely not. That's okay.
Jake, thank you so much for the time, for your candor, for teaching us a lot about a lot of different topics.
Oh, this was so much fun. Thank you so
Good.
much.
I'm glad.
Great.
Awesome.
And everybody, vote.
Vote.
If you're listening and you're in one of the places where there's an election. Vote.
That's right. Get out there, make your voice heard. What's the point of being in a democracy if you don't make it count?
Exactly.
Thank you again so much to Jake Tapper. His book is Race Against Terror. It's out now, and it's awesome. And again, if you enjoyed our 5 deep questions, please join the brand new Being Jewish with Jonah Platt Kehillah. That's Hebrew for community. Head over to beingjewishpodcast.com, click on community, and sign up to receive exclusive footage, FaceTime with me and special guests, a chance to ask questions right here on the show, and a whole lot more. I'm really excited about it, and to keep this show up and running, we could really use your support. And like Jake said, don't forget to vote, get out there, and I will see you back here for the next newsworthy episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt. Thanks again to this episode's sponsor, Berkeley Moshav, a Jewish co-housing community being built right here in California. Visit berkeleymoshav.org to learn more.